Welcome to Midlife Women Entrepreneurs, where you'll find real stories, practical strategies, and the mindset shifts you need for entrepreneurship. If you've ever felt like midlife was too late to launch a business, write a book, or chase a dream, think again. I'm Lynette Turner, your host, and I'm bringing you inspiring conversations and practical tips to help nudge you forward and keep growing in midlife. So let's jump in. Well, I have Rhea Lana Riner with me on Midlife Women Entrepreneurs. I'm excited to have her talk all about her background, her business. It is an amazing story, one filled with tenacity and courage. And I think you're going to just give such a great story today. Before we get started, though, I'm going to hand the floor over to you. Give yourself a bit of a background story, an introduction, and then we'll take it from there.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here today. Yes, I started in my living room almost 30 years ago, having pop-up events for moms, where moms would buy and sell their gently used children's clothing. I was a stay-at-home mom. My husband had left the corporate world and gone into nonprofit work. And so we took quite a dip in our family income. And I was trying to figure out a creative way to stretch the family budget. I just felt like there had to be a better way to do secondhand clothing. So that's how it started a long time ago. And now I lead a franchising company. I'm a CEO. I'm sitting here in our corporate office in Central Arkansas, and we have about 120 franchises in about 26 states, and we're growing. So that's who we are, and that's who I am in a nutshell.
Okay, well, we're going to break that down because there's no rose-colored glasses on your story. So let's back up a little bit. You said that your husband decided to leave his corporate world and go into nonprofit. As a mom of, you had 3 kids at the time?
We did 3 kids under the age of 5.
Exactly. What did you do? Tell us about that day.
Well, it was a journey first to get to that decision as a couple. You know, it was honestly about an 18-month journey because he worked for a big corporation. We had great benefits. He had a promising career. And so it wasn't an easy decision. And I had spent my life in the military. My dad was an Army officer. We'd moved around a lot. And so I really was looking for stability, quite honestly, but just felt like it was the right thing. We are people of faith, and it kind of felt like where we were being led in, and it's what he really wanted to do. And so it was a decision we made as a family, and it caused us to move from Texas to Arkansas. But then I do think the reality hit of, wow, okay, we have a lot less money. We're trying to make it from paycheck to the next paycheck, and the paycheck wasn't making it. And so, and I have a college degree, but quite honestly, it's not super useful like a nurse or a teacher. And so I was trying to figure out how I could try to be present with my kids and our family while also being creative. I don't have or didn't have any kind of business background. So I really didn't even know I liked business, Lynette. It wasn't really even meant to be a business. It was really just a way to be able to get high quality children's clothes for my own kids. So that's just was the very beginning of the journey.
Exactly. And when you, in your introduction, you used the word pop-up, which I don't know that back then, I don't even think, was that even a word? Was that even a concept?
Oh, that's such a great question. No, it was not a word at all. No one had any idea what, but I will say I really did like the event. We called it a sale. We called it an event. I really never wanted to open a store, and people would say through the years, Rhea Lana, when are you going to get serious and open up a store? I never wanted to do that. I really loved this idea of, and even for moms, we want to clean out and gear up and do it only twice a year. And we don't want to have to do it all the time. And I do think that was part of the magic of the model is that, and it helped us have a lot of momentum for these pop-up events.
Well, and everything you're explaining there now, I mean, I think upcycling and all of that sort of vintage, I think the new word is vintage shopping, but back then it was hard to even get good quality clothes or even cute clothes. How did you first decide, okay, let's do this sale? Was it just you alone, or was it some friends that got involved?
Well, I was pretty insecure. Honestly, I'm an introvert by nature, not a risk taker, never been a salesperson. And so I did invite a friend to do it with me, and she declined. And so I knew if I was going to do this, I was just going to have to step out and try it. And it was the season of life when my youngest was headed to preschool. So I did know I had a few mornings a week to myself that I hadn't had for years. And I thought I had kind of been thinking about it through the years because it started like what you said, there really wasn't great clothing options for kids at that time. And where we lived in the panhandle of Texas, it was kind of in a small oil town where Dave had been working. There really was only two options. You either had Walmart, which at that time, Walmart clothes were not very high quality. And if you washed them once, they kind of fell apart or they rusted. They just really weren't high quality. Or you had the expensive boutiques in town. There was this huge gap in the market. And so we just knew that moms were looking for high quality but affordable prices. Again, as my youngest was headed to preschool, I just decided to invite some friends. And my husband had said, and most of my friends were stay-at-home moms. And so I really didn't have a lot of friends that were in the workforce at that time. So my husband was kind of my connection there. And he had said, Rhea Lana, if you can send out 100 postcards, you'll get bulk mail rate. So that was kind of my goal, was to come up with 100 people that I could send these little postcards. So I thought through all of my friends in my neighborhood and the kids' schools and church and all the things. And I just mailed out these postcards, inviting people to consign and shop. And I honestly had no idea if anybody would let me sell their clothes. And I was thrilled when 11 friends let me sell their things. And so they brought them to my house, and we just had a small living room. And my husband helped me move all the furniture out of the living room into the bedroom. And I rented 3 racks of clothes, and we had these really cute little string tags. I really wanted it to be beautiful like a boutique, but this secondhand experience. And so I washed and re-ironed everything and made it all look perfect. So that was the first one, but it actually didn't go that well the first time. So, one thing I learned is that you actually have to also market. And like I mentioned, didn't have any business experience, no marketing experience. And so people didn't come. And I learned a hard lesson. I learned I had to get out and put myself out there, invite people to come. And so I called all those 11 consigners and asked them, would they give me a chance to try one more time? And so I learned, and people did come and shop. And it was just, and we just learned that moms loved this high quality secondhand shopping experience.
Right. So a couple of things you said there. You didn't market it. Okay. Fair enough. Okay. But sometimes how like the postcards I thought would have maybe done something there, created the market, but the postcards were like, would you consign with me?
They were targeted. I think I probably thought so too, but it wasn't enough. It wasn't a big enough net. I didn't cast a big enough net
Right.
to get the shoppers. I did get the consigners, but not the shoppers.
So, okay. So the first sale didn't go very well. You've got this living room now with 3 racks that are full of clothes from consigned people. You pick up the phone. Will you give me another chance? Did you have any naysayers, people who are, wanting to see you fail? Did you ever get that sense from anyone?
And the consigners, they were just happy to kind of be along for the ride. But there were definitely some people had no idea what I was doing. Like when I would even sort of
Right.
try to explain it to my friends or my family, people didn't really have much of an idea. And so I think at that point, there weren't too many naysayers. But as the time went on, definitely lots of, now what are you doing and what? And I remember as the years went by, I was a soccer mom and I would be on the soccer sidelines cheering my kids on. I remember then I would disappear for a month and go do my sale. People were like, really, what are you doing? Oh, I'm just doing this little thing, this little sale. Nobody had any idea what I had disappeared to do. But anyway, it was just kind of funny that it was just sort of gradually, it kind of felt like it was something I was doing underground, that nobody had any idea what I was doing, except for the moms involved. But one thing that did really probably got us on the map and really helped us to find our niche of excellence in consignment was after that first sale, we decided to computerize it. And which is no big deal now because we all carry phones around in our hand. It's like a little computer. But in 1997, that was a really big deal because stay-at-home moms did not have computers in their houses. And it was kind of a neat thing because my husband was able to develop our software, just kind of a hobby. It was kind of a side thing. And so that is what really put us on the map as far as excellence. And so we were able to use technology to help us solve all of our operational problems. And it was very intuitive at the time and innovative. And we loved being able to guarantee every item. And I always wanted to, when a mom would consign her things, I wanted to be able to give her a report of exactly what sold and for how much, because one of my early experiences in secondhand shopping was I either had garage sales, with kind of piles of stuff. And I don't know, I'd spend all Saturday at a garage sale and get all the stuff I didn't really need. And then you had a consignment store, which I loved those. But my experience was that they kind of feel like they fell into a black hole. And I wanted a
Yeah.
report of exactly what sold, exactly how much. And that was one of the things we wanted to create with our brand was real an excellence and a reporting system so moms could really see where, how they had sold how much they'd sold their items for and exactly what had sold.
Well, and like to me, that's a system, right? So you've got a system in place now. I mean, that's even as a today entrepreneur, you have to have systems in place or else you're just gonna, get
Right.
lost. So when did you realize that you were really becoming a real business?
It's such a great question. Because it was a side business, we only did it twice a year. And that was really what I could handle, what we could handle. And it probably was a few years, but because each time we'd have the next sale, 6 months later, it would up another room of the house. And it did get bigger. And we could tell that the demand was growing. And it got so big that honestly it was kind of a tough question there because it kind of put some pressure on the family, honestly. And so we had to struggle with, is this what we're going to really do? Because I was a stay-at-home mom, when the event would come, I was sort of out of commission. There was no groceries in the refrigerator and the laundry wasn't done. And I'd forget somebody's birthday party or, all of a sudden I was pushed to this capacity that I hadn't been to before. And so as a family, we had to decide, are we going to continue doing this? But I think there was a point, it was several years in, when it was gradually becoming more and more profitable. And there was this moment when my husband decided he actually wasn't going to go back into the corporate world, because I kind of thought he would. He wanted to stay doing nonprofit work. And it was kind of at that point that we felt like we had been given this model, that it was working. Probably it's something that if I wanted to think down the road and investment into our family and our financial future, I need to kind of take this thing seriously and see if I could maybe take it to the next level.
Great. And so, okay, two questions that came from what you were just saying there. First of all, you said, sometimes there were twice a year and you weren't home and the fridge was empty. So did you ever feel judged, I guess, for being that working mom in your circle? Because you said most of the women in your circle didn't work. And if you did, how did you handle that?
Well, I did. I can think of one situation that comes to mind where the business had definitely grown. My daughter was in high school at this time, and she was on the high school soccer team. And at this point, the kids kind of had to oftentimes do their own laundry, and so I remember leaving one of my events to get to my daughter's soccer game. And she was a starter, she was a, key player of the team. And I worked so hard to make sure my event was covered so that I could get to her game. And I remember sitting in the stands with all the other moms, and my daughter was sitting on the bench instead of playing for most of the game. And I finally looked around and I kind of said, is there, do you know what's kind of going on with Leah? And one of the other moms said, well, she brought the wrong uniform. And all the other moms, I learned, they were still and were, bringing their daughters snacks and washing their uniforms, bringing their neatly packed bag after school so that they could get them to the game. And I definitely felt like I was the working mom who had not done that for my daughter. And so at the time, I don't know. I don't think that they judged me necessarily, but I felt bad that I hadn't, done the thing that I had wanted. A lot of those years I was that mom that was kind of the helicopter mom that did everything, but I literally couldn't do that anymore. But the neat thing about it is my daughter just became so independent. Like she never did it again. She never brought the wrong uniform. And so it was this wonderful lesson, and she's grown up to, gone on to be very independent. And so it's worked well for our family, and, everybody has their own story, but it definitely was different. But I think about that, but ultimately I also didn't really care because I was growing to love what I was doing. And I do remember being in circles where there were men and women, and I was sort of gravitating to the men because they were talking analytically and about their jobs and their businesses. And the women at that time and my friends were talking about decorating and cooking and all the things. And I just honestly wasn't interested. And so my brain and my heart was just shifting. It was just a natural part of my journey.
I love that. I think even as in midlife, we start to think about, well, what can I do now? Because we've had some sort of event that has triggered something, that triggered the need to make a change. Kids leaving school, death, divorce, lost your
Mm.
job, retired early, whatever the case may be. And so, everybody says, be in the circle that will give you inspiration. You didn't come from an entrepreneurial family. So how did you become this business owner mindset?
Well, I think it started for me out of necessity. Like I had to figure out how we were going to have some, and if my kids were ever going to take a dance class or go to a summer soccer camp, or if we were going to do anything extra, I had to figure something out. So it started there. But then I also just think I kind of enjoyed it. And that was super challenging. And I did have to have this mindset of figuring things out, and I was going to have some grit, and I was going to have some resilience, and I did have to, have this mindset that I'm going to figure this out. I'm not going to give up easily. And so I do think that is an important mindset for any woman trying to figure out the next thing is just be willing to have courage and step out of that your comfort zone, what feels natural, because you will likely find something you never knew you would enjoy and you're actually good at. So that's would be my only thought I would share there. I just think there is an unexpected journey of real joy and purpose that is only discovered if you step out of your comfort zone and just take the next step.
Right. Yeah. And, also too, I'm just going to tack on to that. It doesn't have to be a fully baked idea either. I
Mm.
feel like for me, it's just keep trying things. Maybe you won't know what you really want to do, what you really like to do, but just keep trying things. If you like to read, okay, well, maybe you want to try blogging. If you like doing design, maybe you want to learn how to do, Adobe Pro or, just different things. And, you didn't know that this was going to turn into a 120 location business. But yet you got started and it evolved. And so I guess that is my next question. How did that turn into 120 locations?
I was just going to say too, I do think we have these limiting beliefs that hold us back, and I definitely have. I think women have, but if we can just push past those, which is exactly what you were saying, I was just going to agree to that. And I think what has got us to this next point, I think for me, it just was always taking the next step. And so as my husband realized he wanted to stay in nonprofit work, I started thinking about franchising. I honestly didn't know anything about franchising. And so I bought the book Franchising for Dummies and a couple of other franchising books. And I'd take my kids to the community pool and I would have my highlighter out. And but I did think through how could I try the next step without risking the family farm. Like, I couldn't afford to risk the family farm. And so how could we just take the next conservative step to see if there is a desire out there? And so I just started I remember I met with an attorney who was going to put together my documents, and he even challenged me a little bit. He was like, Rhea Lana, what makes this special and what makes this duplicatable? And, why do you think you can franchise it? And I don't know. I think those were very good probing questions, but it kind of made me want to fight for it. And made me want to make sure that I could create something that was special in the marketplace at that time. And so I started by just getting all the systems that were in my head onto paper. And it started there. And I remember when I got that part done and I told my good friend, okay, I'm done. I've written my operations manual. And she said, Rhea Lana, but what about the why behind those systems? Like, what about how are you going to teach others how you treat people and how you make decisions? And I remember being so frustrated because I didn't want to have to think anymore and write anything else down, but it really made me think through what were my values and how did I process things. And to me, it didn't seem special because it's just who I was, but I realized I did need to sort of try to capture that and get it on paper if I was going to train other people to run events the way I run them. And so it was a challenging piece of the system and the puzzle, but that was the very next step in, do I have something special that is duplicatable and can I even franchise it?
So, okay, two questions. Is it still franchisable? Like, can I go and get a franchise or have you shut that opportunity.
Oh, yes, yes. Today, yes, people can definitely still we have franchising opportunities. Yes.
And does it still follow the model of 2 events a year? Like you talk about, they need to learn how to make these events and things. So is that the philosophy
Yes.
behind it still? Okay.
Yes, that is our model. It's 2 events per year. It's a side business. And so some people do it along with their current career. Some folks are maybe trying to make a move out of a current career so they can do it on the side. And then but if it's built up, our largest franchises, they do that it's a full-time job, but it's still only 2 events per year, which is really what a lot of women want. They want to be able to be more present with their families. And so that's the really wonderful thing about our franchise. Now we can't promise that, but that's what it's turned out. It began to bless me and my family. And that is what caused me ultimately to franchise, is because I was beginning to earn income, that I had friends that were, working full time, and I was able to do it just in 2 events per year.
Right. Okay, so here comes the elephant in the room that I already know. It's during our pre-call, you talked about sort of getting, having to fight the federal government on a few things. So take us through that. What happened? How did it get started, and how you sort of maneuvered through it? And what did it really sort of teach you about, being a woman in business?
Well, thanks, Lynette. Yeah, that was definitely the most challenging aspect of my career. We had barely been franchising maybe 4 years. So I was barely above a stay-at-home mom when I think it back, like barely. But we had grown rapidly in the early years, and it was about 2010, 2012, about that time. And we were doing some innovative things, and the Department of Labor audited us and ended up telling us that we were out of compliance with the Fair Labor Standards Act. And long story short, I ended up filing a lawsuit against the Federal Department of Labor. You don't grow up hoping that that's what you do someday, but I needed to in order to protect my company. So anyway, we had a 10-year battle. And I just learned a lot. I ended up, again, I'm an introvert by nature. So I learned how to do public speaking. I was on national news and radio. We had articles in the Wall Street Journal and USA Today. And it was a national issue. And a lot of it was because of the overregulation and overreach by the government. And so I ended up going to Washington, D.C. and, all the things. We had a bill in Congress that almost got passed, but the things that I learned a lot through it. For one thing, I had several $1 million in fines hanging over my head that would have bankrupt us. So it was terrifying. And then I was also trying to run my very fledgling company. I was wearing like 6 hats because had just started a franchising company, which is like starting a second business. I had my event business, and then when you franchise, it's like starting a second business. But I just learned so much. And for one thing, learned I can do so much more than I thought I could. And I would say that's definitely a lesson I would want our audience to know today, is you really can do more than you think you can. Oftentimes our backs just have to be against the wall. And so I learned my brain, got stronger and smarter. And I learned how to think on national television, and I learned how to articulate very complicated things into very simplified things. And then I just learned how to have a lot of resilience and grit. And it was one of the times when I learned that hard doesn't necessarily mean bad. It just means hard. And so I had to push through those hard things. And I was also leading my company. We had a small group of franchise owners, and it was a time where I was able to, really build trust, because I was trying to be authentic about this crazy thing that we were being, again, in this fight with the government, while I was also trying to sell franchises. And so it was this fine line of how do I just continue to build trust. But the neat thing is the company continued to grow, and my franchise owners did trust me. And so we were about 9 years later. We won the first time. We won in the DC Circuit Court of Appeals. For those who don't know, that's one step down from the Supreme Court. So that was a big deal for a mom from Arkansas to actually win. But it was true. There was overreach and overregulation and some abuse of some systems. And so, but we ultimately did lose the battle. But the neat thing about that is that during that time, my franchise owners supported me so much. When they could have sued me, they could have all turned in their franchises. really, it was a time when our company really came together stronger than ever before. We had to change our model quickly, and it was a risky time because we didn't know when we made these changes, would the model still work and would it still be profitable for all these franchise owners who trusted us? So it turned out to be just a really unifying time because then a year later, we actually then we're all facing COVID. And we're in the event business. And if you remember, all the events in the world were shut down. But for us, we had just gone through this huge battle. And so we were battle tested. We like to say we were lady warriors. And so we were ready to take on the next battle. And that's what, when you do hard things, that's what it does. You know, it increases your capacity and your ability to just not only be resilient, but just have the ability to think of creative solutions. And it doesn't just shut you down. You know, you're able to be able to bounce back and keep finding your path forward, even though it might not be easy.
Right. No, that's great. So it makes me think, the grit, the tenacity, the keep going forward, finding creative ways. What would you say if, a midlife woman was you were let's just say you were doing one of your speaking engagements or something, and somebody said to you, "But what about me? I feel like I'm a little bit too old. I feel like I've missed my window to start something." What would you say to them?
Well, I would say, no, you haven't at all. You know, I think midlife is a great time because you know who you are more than ever before. And especially if you've been raising kids. Raising kids is one of the best things you can do to have the skill set of, how to lead and how to multitask. There's just so many skills that you develop as a woman. And so when you get to midlife, I think you are in the perfect position to think back, or what are the things that brought you joy? And what were the things that you were kind of good at? And then begin to, because I do think as you get older, you just have more bandwidth, you have more time, and you just know yourself better as well. So I think it's the perfect time.
Right. Okay, so going back to your 30 something self when you were ironing clothes and, hoping women would, jump on, what would you tell your 30 something self now?
My 30-year-old self wasn't very confident. I struggled with a lot of insecurity and self-doubt. And so I would just tell Rhea Lana at that age, Rhea Lana, you can do so much more than you think you can. And you're smarter than you think you are. And just to become and enjoy the journey. Don't be so afraid of failure. Don't be so afraid that you're not going to please everyone, but enjoy it and anxiously look ahead with hope because you just never know what's ahead. And I think that there are a lot of women like me, honestly, who struggle with some self-doubt, like those limiting voices. And I would hope that those watching today and listening would be very encouraged and have hope and confidence that you can do more than you think you can.
Right. And so if you thought of it this way, and I like to think of it this way, where, do something in midlife that is beyond yourself so that you leave a bit of a legacy. And so I feel like, some of the things I'm doing, my podcast, I've got a couple of online programs, should leave more than just boxes for my kids. It should leave a legacy, it should set an example. So what legacy are you most proud of?
Lynette, I love that so much, leaving a legacy. When I think about my legacy and when I think about what motivated me as I was building my business, so much of it was for my kids. I have two daughters and a son, and I really wanted them to know that their mom could work hard and that I wouldn't just fall on the floor and cry every challenge that came my way, but that I was going after something while also balancing family. I didn't want to sacrifice my family. I wanted to have success, but I also wanted to have a family. So I think a lot of my legacy has been in how my children view me, and hopefully in turn that would affect their view of life, help them to be resilient and help them to be kind and loving. And so and then I also just our franchise owners who are women, I love it that I'm getting to mentor them in business.
Yeah.
And then we get to just help so many families through our events, probably thousands, I don't know, maybe millions of families. It's just wonderful to know when you have met a need and you're helping families. It's that is truly the gift and the joy of legacy. And I love it that your work is doing that as well. And the world needs more of that. The world, and that's what I love about midlife, is you're in this place where you really are able to you're still looking forward, but you're able to look back and see that there's opportunity for legacy work.
So, okay, so you two questions for you. You're sitting on an idea. Let's say I'm a midlife woman listening to this podcast. I'm thinking, okay, I'm sitting on this idea, but I'm a little bit afraid to get started or even how to start. What would you say to her?
Well, I'd say get started. Try something. Don't take a huge risk, but
Yeah.
I would say try it out and test it out. Now, you do need some awareness of is there a need in the market? Like in your own life, I would say where do you wish there were more opportunities, or where do you wish things were different? Because that's when need and opportunity come together, that's where a business is created. And so again, think about through where could you improve the world around you, and then just begin trying it out and learning. You got to keep learning. You do have to take some time to learn, because we have to stay relevant as we get older. We do have to keep learning. I'm sure you have found that with your all your online courses, and I'm fairly new to the podcasting world, so I respect everyone that's gotten into that. But we all have to push ourselves to keep learning so that we can stay relevant.
Rhea Lana, what does purpose look like for you now? What's next for you, I guess?
Well, when I think about my family, I've got growing grandkids, and I have 5 grandkids now. So I love being able to spend time with my family. I have to travel to see them. Mostly they don't all live around me. But for one thing, that is purpose, is continuing to invest in the next generations in my family. And then also we want to keep growing though. We hope to be at 150 franchise here before too long. And I have a growing corporate team of young, smart people, and I just love investing in them and want to continue to grow our corporate team. So I love working. I love growing our brand. We feel like in many ways we're just getting started. We know that what we do is not ever going to go out of style. Moms are always going to be having kids clothes. So we're excited to continue to expand our footprint in more states.
Okay, well, that's amazing. I love it. I love it. Just keep growing. Just keep growing. That's amazing. Where can people find you if they wanted to just even learn a little bit more about you? Maybe they are interested in doing a franchise.
Yes, you can find us at realana.com, and we would love to tell you all about our franchising.
Okay. Well, listen, thank you for coming on to Midlife Women Entrepreneurs. You are a true testament of what it's all about. So thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you, Lynette. It's been such a joy. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. My pleasure. We'll talk to you soon. Hey, it's Lynette. Thanks for listening today. Please like and subscribe. And if there's somebody out there that you think could benefit from the episode, give it a share. Midlife is your time, so go get it.